get started. So this is the way you should do. So first, we have to find the equilibrium when we have a change in the marketplace. So first thing, we start from the equilibrium. Remember, we have to give a name for the equilibrium, like we sign things like E0 or A, whatever you want to do, and you put P0, Q0. Okay, so that's the equilibrium. And then we have S0 here, D0. This is the product X, this is the price, this is the quantity, okay? Now, what we have here, the new things, remember, we have to follow the steps. We have the step number one, just like step number one is finding the equilibrium at E0 or A, P0, Q0. Now, the second we have, what we have here, no change in supply, but we have increase in demand. What we're gonna do is we have to shift the demand curve. To increase means we have to shift it to the right, up to the right. We have D1, and then we will have new equilibrium right here at E1, and then we will see the movement from A0 to E1. The price will be P1 and Q1. So that's what they ask us to do. Now I just go back and see what is the final outcome. What will happen to the price? I just compare P0 with P1. The price is going up. What happened to the quantity? Shows that the quantity went up. So if we have increase in demand and no change in supply, the price will increase and the quantity will increase. Okay, so that's the way it should be done. So even if I just look at my graph, it tells the whole story. It's a story that I start from E0, I went to E1. Why? Because I shift the demand curve to the right, which is increase of demand. And nothing happened to the supply curve. The market will reach a new equilibrium at point E1 with the new price P1 and quantity Q1. What happened to the price? Price will go up, quantity will go up. Okay, so that's the process you have to use. We'll go do some real life examples later, and then we'll see how that will work. But for now, it is just working with the graphs. You don't have to memorize anything. You have to be able to work with graphs to help you come up with the answers. So now the same things we're gonna do with the second one. We just go, okay, let's see, we have equilibrium here. I call it P0, Q, let's call it A, Q0. We have a demand curve here, we have the supply curve here, and then we have the price, we have the quantity here. Now I'll go back to my information. So I started from the point one. I say, oh, the equilibrium at P0, Q0, before we have any changes in the market. Now, nothing happened to the demand curve, but we have decrease in supply. I'm just going to add a decrease in supply and see what will happen to the price. I'm not going to jump to the answer. I just follow the information. So decrease of supply means I have to shift the supply curve to the left. So I shift the supply curve to the left. Nothing happened to the demand curve, so it stays the same. I will put S1, so I see that I moved from S0 to S1. Now I have a new equilibrium. I will just call it B, and I will see that the price is P1, Q1. Now I would do, okay, we have moved from A to B. That's the new equilibrium. Now I see new equilibrium at point B with the price P1 and Q1. Now I see, okay, I would just go to my graph and say, what happened to my prices? The price will go up and the quantity goes down. So if anytime I have a no change in demand and I have a variable that changes the supply curve, decreases, the outcome will be increase in the price and decrease in quantity demand. Okay, so when we have one change, it's easy to do. So now we can do the same things for the other one. So let's look at the other one. We have first, always, I don't have to read this first. I just first go, I'm going to label my graphs correctly first. I have a price, quantity, S0, D0, equilibrium at A, P0. You can put P1, you can put whatever you want to start from. It just has to be in order. So just show me what is the first position, and if I look at A and B, I know that I start from A and want to B. If I start from E0, I go to E1. Notations tells me where the process, how the process works. So Q0 here. Now, I did all this stuff. Now I just say, okay, what are we gonna do? No change in demand. Demand stays the same, but we have increase in supply. I'm just going to put it in a different color so it can be clear to me that I did this. Sorry, increase of supply. This is increase of supply. So increase of supply means shifting the supply curve to down to the right. So now, like, what does that mean? It's like this one is not here anymore. Now I have to find the equilibrium with new supply. I have a new supply and the old demand curve. That's the equilibrium right here. B. So I moved from A to B. I have new price. I have new quantity. So then I ask myself, what happened to the price? Price went down and quantity increases. So I will put the price went down and quantity equilibrium went up. So even somebody just look at the graph, he'll understand what I did. If you just look at my graphs like this, will tell you the whole story. Okay, so I'm just going to, because it's a lot of things going on there, I'm just going to open a new page so I can show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to share this with you. So also, I want you to know how to do this in Word documents. So in Word, you can just do, let's say, I don't have a pen, I don't have like a touch screen or anything. I can just go to the Word. I do answer, I do shape. So I put lines like this. I can make them bigger if I want. So that's the x-axis. I can just copy this line and have y-axis like this. Okay, so then I will answer supply curve. So do answer shape. I will just do, this is the demand curve. And then I will just do another line, which will be the supply curve. I don't have to draw by hand or anything. I just do like that. So you can see. Then I will just answer notations if I want to do that. So I just do, okay, I'm going to have, if you have a touch screen, it'll be much easier. But if you don't, it's okay. You can just try with so S0. That's the supply curve. And then I will have the demand curve right here. Okay, so now I see you have supply demand. I will put a price also. I will ask you to do something with these graphs later because I have to give you some article to analyze, do the same thing. So I have a price here. And I'll just put price if I want, just to be sure that I would just put price. I will do quantity all the way in the bottom here. Okay, so then I will just answer the line for the price. And I will answer the line for the quantity below. Okay, so just do Q0 here, P0 and Q0. This is here, the equilibrium, or PE1 or PE0, whatever you want to put, P0. And then I will put Q0 here. Okay, so that's the equilibrium. And then I will put, that's the equilibrium here. I put A or B or whatever you want to do. Okay, so that's the, now I will add, for example, in our case, we had, what we have in the last one we did, we're going to do no change in demand, no change in supply and decrease of demand. So no change in supply and decrease in demand. I'm just going back to my line. I will add another line for decrease of demand, means I have to shift the demand curve to the left. I'm just going shifting the demand curve to the left, and I will make it bigger. I want to, and put it in a different color. Okay, so now I have a new equilibrium. It will be much easier to do because now I have everything I need. Okay, here is new equilibrium. Okay, see, with new equilibrium, I can just put different colors so it can be clear for me that what I am right now. And then I will put a B here. So I have P1, Q1, I see what happened. So you will have an article that you have to read and build graphs like this. From the article, you will take the article. I will send you a newspaper article, and I will ask you to build graphs like this, like say, this is what happens in this market. I will give you an example you can see, and then you will do the same thing. Okay, that will be counted as homework for your class participation. Okay, so that's the easiest way to do it. So now let's go back to our work. So now here we have no change in supply. We have S0, D0, E, A, and B. So we call that, that's the equilibrium. You want to do this a little bit neat, okay? P0 here, Q0. Now, what it says, no change in supply and decrease in demand. Demand has to go to the left. I just put a different color. So it's better to use different colors so you can see what you're doing. So I put demand, it goes to the left. And I will have a new equilibrium right here. And P1, Q1, you can see the price went down and quantity goes down. So if there is no change in supply and decrease in demand, the price equilibrium will go down and quantity equilibrium will go down. Okay? So that's one change. One change is easy to do. The problem tends to get messy a little bit if when you start talking about two changes. So look at this case here. So remember what I said. Every time you have both of them are shifting at the same time, you have increase in supply and you have increase in demand. So it means both of them are shifting. So there is a way I can remember this, like I can tell you what is the outcome will be. I will be like, if I did all the analysis, I will tell you that the price will be undetermined. I don't know what will happen to the price, depends, and quantity equilibrium will increase. But that's when you do it so much times, as I did for 8 years, you will remember this. But I don't want you, this is not the way you should be done. The way normally it works, you have to have the system in mind. That remember, we talked about economic as the way of tools, not something you have to memorize. You have to know the process. So every time I have both demand and supply shifting, I have to have 3 graphs. Makes my life much easier. Why I have to have 3 graphs? That will, even if it tells me that you have increase of demand and increase of demand, it does not tell me how much shift. So the case number 1, it could be they are shifting with the same amount. They are increasing by a same amount. So I will shift the demand curve, increase the demand curve to the right. And I will shift the supply curve with the same amount. That's the case number 1. So I started from the equilibrium. This is where I started from. I started from this point here. This is my equilibrium, P0, Q0, point A. Now I end up at new point, which is B, with increase of demand, an increase of supply and increase of demand. But the outcome is this. Look at what happened to the price. The price stayed the same, but quantity equilibrium increases. That's the case number 1. Case number 2, it could be that supply increased a lot, but the demand shifted just a small. So they are both increasing, but the difference is the size of the shift. So I will go back and do the same thing. So say, okay, I started from the point A. P0, Q0, S0, D0. Okay. Now I have to shift the supply curve with a large amount. So it means I have to increase the supply curve like this. This is S1. But the demand curve will shift just a little bit. D1. Now I have a new equilibrium at the B. when the market will dust settle down, it's not like the market will jump straight from A to B, but we'll have a lot of things going on, a lot of movements. Then at the end, we'll settle in the long term, we'll settle at the equilibrium of B. Now at B, we have new price, P1, Q1. And I say, what happened to the price when I moved from A to B? Okay, the price went down and quantity equilibrium went up. So in this case, we have big shift of the supply and small shift of demand. Now the price will go down and the quantity equilibrium will increase. That's the case number 2. Case number 3, what if we flip this situation where supply increases a little bit, but the demand will increase a big. So all of them have one thing in common, they increase. Both of them are increasing, demand and the supply are increasing. So I will start again from the point A. We have P0, Q0, S0, D0. Now, the difference is the size of the shift of the demand and supply. So shift of supply is small. Look at the arrow. I just put it big, so you can see this is big shift of supply and small shift of big shift of demand and small shift of the supply. So I will just go, okay, I'm going to shift the supply curve just a little bit, but I will shift the demand curve bigger than the supply. D1, S1 here. So now I will, after everything settled down, I will end up at the equilibrium at point B with new price P1 and quantity Q1. So what happened to the price here? So you have P1 goes up, P equilibrium, and quantity equilibrium goes up. So that's just because they are shifting at the same time. We have 3 situations. So now, if I looked at the first case, I have the price stayed the same, the quantity increased. Now, next case, the price went down and quantity equilibrium increased. The third case, we have increasing the price and decreasing quantity demanded. So in all the 3 cases, okay, we're just going to erase all this stuff. So on all the 3 cases, we have the quantity going up. All the 3 cases are the price, the quantity is going up, all of them. But the one has same, the other one has decreased, and the other one has increased. So the price has 3 outcomes, and quantity has 1 outcome, which is increase. Whatever happened at the end, whatever happened if we have increase in supply and increase in demand, we always have increase in quantity equilibrium. But the price is undetermined, or we cannot, it's ambiguous because we have to have more information. You have to tell me this, what situation you want me to. So sometime you will get this in a question. It says, what happens? So I will give you a case analysis that tells you, in a market, we have increase of supply and increase of demand. That's all you have. And I will ask you, what do you think will happen in this market? So your answer will be this three graphs. Say, okay, based on what I have here, if I have both shift of demand and shift of supply increases, I mean shifting to the right, both of them, the outcome will be that the price will be undetermined and the quantity will be increasing. That's the answer. So in case we have like this, the answer will be PE is ambiguous or question mark. That means I don't know, because I have 3 cases, either the same or down or up, and quantity equilibrium will go up. Then I will give you information to conclude that one of them is increasing more than the other. Either I will tell you that, yes, it's true, your answer is correct. Now, what happens if we know that the demand increases more than the supply, or the supply increases more than the demand, or they both are increasing with the same amount? So you have to figure out, is it the case 1 or case 2 or case 3? Okay, if you have just, so what I'm trying to explain to you here, so if you just have increase of supply and increase of demand, are you guys looking at, you can see, I'm sharing my slides. I don't know if I'm sharing the right slide or not. I'm talking about the homework I asked you to do. Is that the same one you're looking at? Hello, Carl, can you tell me? Hello?
Wait, Professor.
Can you guys see what I'm talking about or no?
Yes.
Okay. You're looking at the like, see, let me just see. Are you looking at the number 5, supply increase and demand increase? That's what you're seeing in your screen. I are moving your furniture. You can just like mute your stuff. Okay, now we're gonna do another case. So we did increase. I'm gonna do the next one, then I will move. But I'll let you finish this at home. So I'm not going to do all of them because now it's be clear. So I won't do. You can do at home decrease because we did increase and increase. Okay, you can do decrease. Both of them are decreasing. Okay, if both of them are decreasing, you have to do the same things. You have to say, okay, what if the supply decreases a little bit, or they are decreasing with the same amount? That's the case number 1. What case number 2, if the supply decreases more than the demand? And the third case will be what happens if we flip that, the supply decreases just a little bit and demand decreases a lot, and then you will come up with 3 outcomes. What you're going to come up with is that the price will be question mark, because you'll have 3 outcomes, but you'll be sure that the quantity equilibrium will go down. But I'm not going to go through that because you will be able to do it based on what we did in increase and increase. Now, what happened if they move in opposite directions? Now, this one they are moved in the same direction. We're going to do it if they move in opposite direction. So one is increase and one is decrease. So we'll have always, you have three cases because they are moving in the same direction. They are both of them are shifting. Sorry, I mean they are both shifting. We are in the case number 7. Okay. So we have increase of supply and we have demand decreases. And we will have 3 cases. One, we will see what if supply increases the same amount as the demand. The one increases and the other one decreases, but the same size of the shift. So please, I'm going to start again. I'll just say, okay, I'm going first before I do anything. I just go see. A market was at the equilibrium at point A with P0, Q0, S0, D0. I have the price, quantity. Normally, I have to have the name of the product right here. So now I can see, okay, I'm starting with point A. Let's say if I do this, if I shift the supply curve and demand curve with the same size, but in the opposite directions. So the supply increases. So we're going to increase the supply, means I have to shift it to the right, S1. And I will decrease the demand with the same amount. So this distance is the same as this distance. Now you can see I will get to the new equilibrium at B with the new price, P1, Q1. So if we have the increase in supply and decrease in demand with the same shift, the outcome will be the price is going down, but the quantity will be the same. And now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to shift the supply curve big, but I will decrease the demand just a little bit. Okay, so I will do the same things first. I will just go, okay, I'm starting from at this point A, P0, Q0, S0, D0, the price, the quantity here, P, Q, and I put A. This is my point A with P0, Q0. Now I will do just exactly what I have here: increase of supply and a decrease of demand, but in the different sizes. So increase of supply will be big deal, S1. The demand will decrease just a little bit. So we have a new equilibrium. And at point B, P1, Q1. So you can see what happened to the equilibrium. Price went down and quantity equilibrium increases. Okay, so that's the second line. Now, last one, I was just going to do the opposite of this case here. I will just start again from the S0, D0, A, the price, the quantity, equilibrium here at P0, Q0. Okay, so now I have to do the opposite of this, means I will increase the supply just a little bit, but I will decrease the demand. Huge shift in the demand. The effect in demand is a bigger than the effect in supply. So I want to do this. So I will just do, the demand will decrease a big deal, D1, but the supply will increase just a little bit, S1. So now I have a new equilibrium right here. I will move from point A to B, and I will go up to new equilibrium P1, Q1. So now I see what happened to the price in this case. The price went down, and the quantity equilibrium went down. So now, what happened in all the three cases that are the same outcome is that the quantity equilibrium will go down. The final outcome that we know for sure that quantity equilibrium will go down, but the price, it could be the same, like in the case number one, it could be down. This is okay. No, sorry, that's not what I meant. That's wrong, and wrong answer. So the one thing they have in common is look at the prices. So if that price went down, but the quantity equilibrium, it could be the same, it could increase, it could decrease. So I have question mark or undetermined quantity equilibrium. So if they are, so one thing you have to remember, if the supply and demand are moving in the opposite direction, we will figure out what happened to the price, but we will not be able to determine what happened to the quantity. Okay, so that's the idea behind all this stuff. So you have another case here, and then you're able to fill this table here. So you have a supply, you have demand. So one thing is that if the case same means there is no change in the demand, no change in supply. So we have nothing, say no change, no change, no change. Because we didn't do anything, we just kept them the same. But if we have the supply stays the same and increase in demand, you just have to build graph and say, okay, what happened if I have equilibrium and I increase the demand? This is a supply demand. So now what happened here? Demand increases. Demand increases, new equilibrium will be, the price will go up and quantity equilibrium will go up. If the demand decreases and the supply stays the same, the price will go down, the quantity will go down. Now, what if this demand stays the same here, and then we're going to change the supply? This is just one case. So increase, demand stays the same. If we increase the supply, the price will go down and the quantity will go up. If we demand stays the same and we decrease the supply, the price will go up, the quantity will go down. And now you can see when we have increase, the price will be undetermined, the quantity will go up. If we have increase of supply but decrease of demand, the price will go down and the quantity will be a question mark. So if we have decrease of supply and increase of demand, the price will go up and the quantity will be question mark. Now, if both decreases, the quantity equilibrium will go down, but the price will be undetermined. Okay, so that's summarize the whole thing. You have to be able to fill this table. You can use graphs. Normally, I prefer if you go for each case and use the graphs to find the answer. Okay, so please, the best things you can do when you're doing the supply and demand analysis, you always do the process I explained in the slides. The first step, one, it's initial position. My market at equilibrium, I will just do market at equilibrium at point A with the price P0, Q0. Then I go straight and I will build graph that shows me that I am in that position. I just do okay. I don't know what happens in the market yet. I just know this is the price, this is the quantity. I have a supply curve, I have the demand curve, I have the equilibrium, P0, Q0. I have P0, Q0 here, and I have point A. And second, I will what happens in the market? What happened? Is it affecting supply or demand? If it's supply or demand, how? So let's say supply increase. I'm just going to go and say, okay, I'm going to increase the supply. I'm just going to increase supply. I just go, okay, a new supply S1. I will shift it to the right. I have a new equilibrium. We'll move from A to B with new price P1, Q1. So the step number 3 will be, okay, after introducing this new elements in the market, I will have a new equilibrium at P with P1, Q1. And then I say, okay, at the end, step 4, I'm just going to compare P0 and P1. What happened to the price? 1 down. P go down, quantity, equilibrium increases. Okay, that is the system you can use. You can read. So what we're going to do, you will get an article written in plain English, like in newspaper, New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Boston Globe. They will read it. The article is written in plain English. You have to transfer it to this language, to the English, like economic analysis. I will show you. I have some examples we can do together. But that's how it's done. This is how people start. When you're trying to write the article, the first things you do is building these graphs, showing this summary. Then you can explain it for average person in English. So let's go to do some example. You can see how that works. I'm going to share with you my slides so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to my PowerPoints. If you don't see my PowerPoint, let me know, because I am going to share with you. Can you see now the economic analysis using supply and demand?
Yes.
Good, thank you. So this is the 4 steps you have to do. First, assuming nothing happens in the market, you will show your equilibrium. Second, you will explain what happens in the market and how that affects the demand and supply. Does it affect demand or supply, and how? Second, you will find new equilibrium, and then you will compare. The outcome will be what happens to the price, what happens to the quantity equilibrium. That is 4 steps. You have to know it, quickly do it. So let's do some example here. So I'll show you how that works. So here is an example. So we're going to use the supply and demand to analyze what happens in the market of gasoline. This is gasoline market when we have a certain situation. So look, you have 3 things going on at the same time. You have to use the graphs, visualize the analysis. So people look at the graph. I can just look at the graph by itself. I can understand what you did. You have to write economic analysis as a summary, and then you can explain it in plain English. I'm not going to ask you to do this. That's just writing a paragraph in English. It's easy to do. You can do it in your own terms, but you will be responsible to do both analysis. To build graph, showing your answers graphically, will be clear, clean. No, if I have a question, I ask you to do it. I want you to be clear and clean. What does that mean, clear and clean? First, I have to know what market are you talking about. Means I have to look, see, if I look at here, I see I'm talking about gasoline market, the product, or market. It could be market, it could be product, it could be company, but it has to be clear for me. Second, you have to put the price on y-axis and Q in x-axis. You have to follow the order. So if I look at this, I know you started from here and you end up with this 2. Means you start from the equilibrium A and you end up at the equilibrium B. I see that you start from the price P1 and you end at P2. The quantity Q1, this is in order. If somebody looks at my analysis like this, okay, I know what this guy did. So the things I will also emphasize is that these 2, they go together. It's not like you do one and then you do the other. They are going in the same order. So every time I do something, I have to translate it in my graphs. So for example here, so I will start saying, okay, the market for gasoline was at the equilibrium at P1, Q1, A. So I'm going to just go build S1, D1 right here. I show that the equilibrium at P1, Q1. Second, I will explain. Now I can read the case and see what happened. Well, tell me what happens in the market first. I have to write like small sentence that tells me what happened. In this case, I would just say, okay, what happens in the market? So Americans start to drive fuel efficient cars rather than gas guzzlers cars. What do we call that? There is a substitute effect for cars, substitutes. People are switching from cars that consume a lot of gas to more fuel efficient cars. But the question is not about cars. They have to be careful. Sometimes you will get confused. So the question is explain what happened to the quantity and price of gasoline. So I have to know what is the relationship between the car and gas. If I don't understand the relationship, we'll not be able to explain it. So first, they are giving me the information about car market. All the information that they give me is about the cars. But I know what is the relationship between the gasoline and cars. If you don't remember, that's complement, means they go together. If you have a car, you have to have a gas. Okay, so now I will understand how that will affect my gasoline market. So people substituting for fuel efficient cars, what does that mean? It means they will consume less gas. So it means the demand curve would go down. I would just go and shift the demand curve to the left, and I will have a new equilibrium. And I say, okay, the step number 2, the change that happens, this delta here means just change in people's behavior. They are driving more efficient cars, means they will consume less gas. Now the demand for gas will go down. It has nothing to do with the price of gas. It just has to do with people's behavior with cars. So now I will go and shift that. Then I say, okay, the step number 3, I will find the equilibrium point, which is B, where the intersection with the new demand curve with the old supply curve. Then I will say, okay, a new equilibrium like this. A will move to B. It's not right away. So what happens in real life is this. I'm just going to explain this one more time. So when we have a shift in the demand to D1, the price will still at P1. So the quantity supplied will be here, and the quantity demanded will be here. So when we'll have a surplus, if we have a surplus, what the law of supply and demand says that the price will tend to go down. The force of the market the price will keep going down till we reach the new equilibrium in the long term. That's P2, Q2. That's really how that works. But you just, for your economic analysis, you don't have to explain that. First we have surplus, then we'll go to the equilibrium. We just say, okay, we will, in the long term, we have a new equilibrium at B with the price P2, Q2. And then I will say, what happened to the price? The outcome will be that the price moved down from P1 to P2. I will do the price equilibrium going down. And what happened to the quantity? We moved from Q1 to Q2. Okay, so that's the new equilibrium. And the quantity will go down. So in case where we have people switching from cars that consume a lot of gas to more efficient cars, like electric cars or like hybrid cars, that's what we get in the market. And that's what happens also in today's economy. It's true that people are driving more efficient cars, the price of gas will go down. That's one variable. Here's what I want you to know. The gas market you are taking only normally in real life when you're trying to study gas market, you will not have one variable, you have a lot of variables. So if I have to write an article about the gas market, gasoline market, this is one variable. There is another variables. I will be 3 or 4 variables. I have to do the same thing for each one of them, and then I will put them together, all 3 or 4 of them, to find out what happens in real life. But you study one at a time, one variable at a time. Okay? So please, if you have a question, let me know before I move on to the next. This is very important. You have to be able to do this. So if you can do this analysis, you are really good with chapter 3 and 4.
Professor.
Yes, ma'am.
So how can you know like A minus P1? How can you know like you have to put minus or?
What decrease you mean?
No, you put minus like number 1.
No. This is not minus. Thank you very much. Sometimes people, yeah, that's a very good point. This, are you talking about this? This yeah. Minus? No. This is just say A. You can put arrow. You can put 2 points here. just to show you what, like, say, I'm trying to say A at equilibrium point at point P1 and Q1. There's no minus. It's not minus. It's just like a sign. It has no meaning here. Thank you very much. Yes, there is no minus here, please. It's just a score, whatever they call it, underscore, or whatever the name in English. You can put A or put 2 points here. You can put like just A and put the parentheses. You don't have to put it. This has no meaning. Thank you very much. Yes, it's very important. So it's the same thing as the arrow here. Okay. Anything else? Let's do some another examples. So here is what I think you will be able to do this. But the problem that most of the students find themselves in trouble is that to figuring out what market. So some people, for example, reading all this stuff, they are thinking about talking about car market. No, we are not talking about car market. Clearly, you have to understand that we are talking about gasoline market. That's where you can get in trouble. The first things, I'm talking about gasoline market. And then the second question I have to do in my analysis, what is the relationship between gasoline and cars? How that will affect my analysis. Other stuff is just mechanical stuff. You go from, when you figure out this is the hardest part you have to figure out when you're doing analysis. What happens? When you know that, the other stuff is just moving graphs from to the right to the left or whatever you want to do. So another example you can see, I'm going to do this together with you. So here, I want you to read this slide, then, so you can see what I'm talking about before I will start. And I will ask you this question: what market we are trying to analyze, doing economic analysis for what market or what product? So you don't have to give me the answer. Just type it. I just want to read what people will say. Each one of you will just type the answer. Just chat with me. Put the answer. I want to see what you guys think. Okay, let's I get a few questions. I get answer from Ryabov, and I get the answer from Bochley and Rafael. So IBM, not the IBM. It is IBM computers. So IBM, that's the thing. It's not computers, not IBM. It's IBM computers, because IBM does a lot of things. Okay, we have to be careful with that. So IBM quantity of, it says IBM computers. So that's very important. So that's what I'm gonna do. I do IBM computers. You have to be careful. Some people say computers, some people say IBM. No, it is IBM computer. That's specific. Now, that's the one thing. So I will do the step number one. Remember, step one, just build in a graph. Supply, demand, S0, D0, and the equilibrium, P0, Q0. That's step one. I would just put A at P0, Q0. The second thing, that's where things get confusing. That's the hard part. So what happens to the IBM computers? What happens in that market? So we have equilibrium, expands market into Australia, China, and Japan. So we did a lot of, you have to know how to, what does that mean? Market expansion means increased number of buyers. So that's called market expansion. Market expansion. What does that mean? So it means increase of number of buyers. Is that affect demand or supply? When we talk about buyers, we're talking about demand. So demand will go up. So I just have to shift the demand curve to the right. okay, D1. And then I have new equilibrium at P1, Q1. There I go. The step number 3 will be a new equilibrium at B1. And then I will see what happened to the price and what happened to the quantity. Okay, so this is an answer for this question. So, okay, so initial equilibrium is at point A with the price P1, Q1. Change, increase of available population means increase of number of buyers. Demand increases. I'm going to shift the demand curve to the right. I have D1. Now the market will move from A to B. That's the new equilibrium with the price P2, Q2. Then I will compare the old price with the new price. And if in all the quantity with new quantity, the price would go up. So, and the resultant equilibrium at P2, what happened to the price? Price goes up and quantity will go up. I'm just looking at the graph. So you have this column and this go together. So this is the explanation. If you want to put it in plain English, you can do this also. So before IBM marketed to fewer people at Q1 and Q, before they expanded to the new markets, they just have less market available. When they expanded to foreign markets, more people wanted their computers. Means more number of buyers increases. Means we have to have a shifted demand curve. It is not the price. It is another variable that shifts the demand curve to the right. So ceteris paribus, everything else equal, what we have at the end is the price and quantity will increases from P1 to P2 and from Q1 to Q2. Okay, so you will have examples like this. You can like you want to look at this, you can just Google supply and demand analysis articles. You will see a lot of them online. There are a lot of them for education. They're trying to explain why the tuition are going up. So it is a very important model. It does not give you one thing is that you need more information to give me, for example. So the one thing I want you to understand is this. This gives you a bigger picture, just a big picture. You will not be able to tell me, for example, how much exactly the price will increase. You need more information. Okay, so I cannot just say, for example, for IBM computers. So if the price, quantity, supply, demand, okay, and then I have equilibrium here. Let's say IBM computer is $300, and they are selling 1 million computers. Will I be able to tell you, for example, that how much? So I go to the equilibrium at point B. Say, for example, here, P2, Q2. I will not be able to tell you, for example, it will be 350 or 320 or 330 or 340. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I know will go up. Do I know how many computers IBM will sell? I have no idea. I need more information. That's not the purpose of this class. There is other class that we study elasticity. There's a problem with elasticity also. So there is a formulas you can use to figure out exactly, not exactly, but to do close. You will figure out how much exactly will be the price if we have this situation, and what happened to the quantity if we have this situation. Means you have to have a lot of information. So first, you have to figure out what is the relationship between the IBM computers and Dell, for example, and HP, income, all this stuff. So you have to have a function that gives you all this information so you can solve this multi-variable equation to come up with the answer. But in this case, the purpose is having just a bigger picture. I know if the demand increases, the price will go up. How much? I don't know. The quantity increases. How much? I don't know. But this is very helpful to, like, for example, you can use this model to solve a lot of problems. So let's say I want to solve the problem of traffic. So I have a lot of people driving into Boston. I have to figure out how can I solve this problem using the market. Sometimes people, they say, we don't need the government to be involved in everything. We can use the market to solve the problem. How we can solve the problem of tuition increases? Like, so for example, let's look at the tuition, for example, school. So this is school or undergrad. We have tuition, which is the price. How many students? You have supply and demand. And they have the tuition here. This is what we are at right now, Q0. So the government is trying to figure out how to reduce the price. I have to know how can I reduce the price. My goal is to reduce the price. But also I want to keep the quantity either more or at least at the same level. What does that mean? I have to be somewhere here to the right. How can I come up the equilibrium will be somewhere in here. So, or at least instead of having the price goes up all the way up here, we want it just to go a little bit up here. So I have to figure out how I can move the demand and supply curve to come up with, there is a way I can do that. So I can just increase the supply of schools, universities, number of, like we have seats that we can, more seats in each class that we can have more places. Now, if we increase the supply of seats, you can see the price will go down, the quantity goes up. You can increase the supply and increase the demand, but also just have to increase more classes, but the students will increase a little bit more. You still have the same outcome. So, if I do this, I will come up with the outcome I want. Now I know what I need to do. If I want to fix this issue of tuition, I have to increase the supply a lot, and I will increase the demand a little. Or I have to have the same amount of students, but I will increase the size of classes, or have more seats, or have more schools. Or I have to figure out alternative education, like that's what we do online. So increase the supply means having more schools, or you just figure out alternative, which is called substitute effect. It means instead of people demanding going to traditional schools, we can figure out how to decrease the demand by offering different method of education. So now we can see I need to do this. I need first to increase supply, even if the demand increases a little bit, or at least I figure a way to decrease the demand for traditional schools. And then I will look at the relationship between the demand, supply, what variables that will help me, for example, do all this stuff. That's where the government policies or schools policies or companies policies comes to. So first, when you have the framework in mind, say you start. So instead of starting from here's what I'm trying to say here. Now, we start from the top to explain. So remember, we want to explain. Remember the model, economic model. We can use it to explain events. We can predict what will happen. We can use it also to formulate policies. They say, I want to start, instead of going from the top down, I'll go bottom up. So I say, okay, I want to reverse engineering the system. So what if I reverse all this stuff? So I say, okay. So I want to start from here, from the step number 4. I want the price to go down, but I want to keep the quantity either be the same or increases. So then I would go back to step number 3. What I have to do to come up with this too? Should I have, first I have to think about increasing supply, or I have to increase supply and demand stays the same. So stays the same, demand stays the same, or I have to increase supply a lot and increase the demand just a little bit. I also can do this by increasing supply and decreasing the demand as well. But I have to increase the supply a lot. There is a case where I can come up with this. Then I say, okay, now I know what I have to do. So what policies I have to implement so that I can increase supply? Should I help schools, for example, build more classrooms? Should I give help like online education, give them grants? The government can give help to schools that willing to go online and teach online. That's the thing. That has to do with supply. Then I will see how can I help go talk with the demand. So for example, I can say, okay, the way I can decrease the demand, for example, dealing with for international students. That's an example. So say, for example, if having number of visas that for international students, I can reduce the number of visas I give to international. So that's a good, that's economically analysis. But sometimes you have to look at each policy, how that will affect our life. You know, it's not just that you come up with the answer and then you move on. So remember, when we come up with a policy, you have to think about cost benefit, how that will affect us as a society. Okay. Yes, more better. Thank you. I'm just like looking at the above answers. Thank you very much for that. So that's how you can, this is very powerful. When people are talking about market solution, people who believe in the market, that's how they think you should behave. You can do it for traffic, for example. You can see there is demand for, I want to reduce traffic to Boston, for example. So I say, the first thing is driving. There are different ways I can reduce number of, I can look at driving itself. For example, make gas expensive, tools, for example, make them expensive, that affects people. But also I can look at and complement product. What goes with driving? Gas price. I can also parking. If I affect the parking, I can affect how many people drive to the city. Because to drive, you need parking. That's complement. So if I make it hard to park in Boston, less people will drive to the city. That will traffic. If less people drive to the city, means we have less traffic. So that's why we have in Boston to park. It takes you a lot of time to park, and it's very expensive. The reason they do that is just they want to reduce the traffic. Like 93 North, 93 South, it's a mess. If you drive in the morning, like it takes you for 20 miles, it takes you 1 hour and a half to get there. So the government is trying to figure out what to do instead of saying like, so if you are in dictatorship country, say no driving. They will say, okay, don't drive. That's it. The government said that. But because we live in a free country, we don't want the government to tell us what to do. We can figure out how we solve the problem just using the market system. Say, make it hard to park for people. Have less available parking spots. Make it expensive. Tickets has to be expensive. So if you park illegally, you get very expensive tickets. That's an example. And that's complement. You can look at the substitute effect. Means so if the driving is a product, we have to find another product that does the same thing as driving. Means getting you from point A to point B. It's public transportation. So if I make public transportation comfortable, available to people, there's no reason I have to drive and pay $50 parking spot. I just take the red line or orange line or green line, and it's much better for me. So that's why, for example, now you see like in Quincy, for example, they will have a parking spot for people in Quincy. You don't have to drive to the city. You just go and park in the T station. It's cheap to park, and then you drive and you take the train to Boston. You don't have to drive into Boston. It's much easier for you to do. So you don't want to waste 1 hour and a half in the car to get to Boston. You just park somewhere. So that's another solution. If you give them parking outside of the city, they will not get drive in the city. Some countries, they do this. And Brazil did this before, but it didn't work. So what they do in Brazil, like according, I didn't see it, but some friend of mine who is Brazilian told me this. And in big cities, if somebody from Brazil here can confirm this or not. So you have 2 plates. So what they do, so one day the people with even number will drive in. The second day with people with odd number will drive in. So if you have even number, for example, Monday, you are willing to go, you drive to the city. Wednesday and Friday, okay? Then the odd numbers will drive Tuesday, Thursday, and what are the other days? Okay, the problem is this. What do you think will people do if we have this policy in Boston? So if I imagine in Boston says, okay, people with even number will drive one day and odd numbers will drive one day. What do you think will happen?
Will protest or something.
You can protest as much as you want. The government has a monopoly over power. They can beat you, like what happened today in Oregon. And just like trying to play the system. Think about playing the system without getting in trouble. But people according to this friend of mine, people have 2 plates. Some people put 2 plates. They have 1 plate has even number and 1 plate has odd number. If you are rich, you might have 2 cars at home. You can just have 1 with even number and 1 with odd number. You drive one day, and so that's you end up like having a mess. So people are smart. They can figure out a way to. Every time you might come up with a policy, if you didn't study it very well, if you don't understand it well, put in the right incentives in place, people will always figure out how to go around the system. They are cut corners, always. So what they do is that, okay, I'm going to have 1 plate that has even number and 1 plate has odd number, and I will drive every day to the city. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes the policy, this is a problem with the government. It's not a problem, but I'm just saying it happens with us all. You think that the solution is good, but you always like there is unintended consequences. You don't know how that works. You will have a problem. The easiest, the best way, like shown in Europe, the best way to work this system is having public transportation. Have clean buses, trains, invest in infrastructure. People can get from point A and B without waiting in the snow and stuff like that. So they can, just because of their self-interest, that's what you're trying to use. Self-interest is better for them to use public transportation than driving. It costs a lot to drive, a lot of the money to park, and that's much easier just to take public transportation. That's the idea behind all this stuff. So this is another example here. You can look at it if you want. Take a second, just look at it if you want to try it yourself. I'll give you like a few minutes. 5 minutes, try it. Just remember, the graphs and economic analysis, they have to go together. Step 1, step 2, step 3, they go together. You cannot just do one and then move to the another one.